John Ritt. I'm the design director at Deutsch and in charge of everything visual, essentially. We have 15 creatives, 3 writers, 12 designers, working on every single brand that's inside the agency. Designers are focused on anything from corporate identity to environments to packaging to print advertising to outdoor advertising, guerrilla marketing. And really we focus on storytelling as it applies to each individual brand. Texas is amazing. I mean, DIRECTV's been very ambitious of late in acquiring their own content. They've done amazing things, wondrous things in the area of sports and how they broadcast sports. They chose probably the best show on television in the last 10 years, which is called Friday Night Lights. And they acquired the rights to air it exclusively themselves 6 months before the networks could get a hold of it. As I understand it, there was a small but dedicated, loyal fan base to this television show. It's relatively unknown, I think because it wasn't marketed correctly. And that was one of the genius moves of DIRECTV to get it, because it couldn't be better as an entertainment property. So here at Deutsch, David Blacker, the writer who I worked with, and myself were already rabid fans ourselves of the show. Friday Night Lights talks about high school football, and what happens on the football field is almost cliche successful, and it stands in direct contrast to the fact that off the field, every one of the characters is facing all sorts of adversity in their life. So David and I came up with this concept which we called opposing forces. This was a unique campaign in that we really were conscious of the fact that we were primarily addressing fanatics and people that were going to know every character, they were going to know their love interests, they were going to know their background, they were going to know their story, and what we're doing is we were presenting it in a way that they haven't really considered. The first shoot we did was in a church with actress Minka Kelly. Her own lust and drive, she's a beautiful, young, vibrant woman that clearly has all sorts of affection and passion, but Lila resists these temptations, and a lot of turmoil has happened in the town with her family as well. Her family's split, and Lila has turned to Christianity to be what she hopes will sort of be her saving grace. But you can tell that under the surface she is conflicted. And we decided to photograph her in a church in a pretty provocative outfit, in a provocative stance. I mean, it was critical to the shot, because the shot, that particular shot, there was a lot of subtlety in it. It had to be communicated through some body language. Martin Schuler was our photographer, and we should actually, everything happened perfectly because of Martin Schuler. What he brought to the concept was invaluable, not only in his skill set, but with his spirit. Some photographers were resistant to take on the project because we wanted so many locations in so few days. Martin didn't have a problem with it. He was willing to take it on. Our second shoot was in an authentic mobile home park, a real mobile home park, complete with pit bulls on chains that we had to avoid. We had this elaborate set that had been built before by Martin's incredible set builder, and it was covered in a series of textured and painted and dilapidated ladders. And we shot a scene where the characters, who are named Tyra and Landry, are essentially trying to escape, in a metaphorical sense, escape from the town of Dillon, Texas. So Tyra is climbing up these ladders in an effort to get away, and Landry is there supporting her, but reluctantly supporting her. Our next show was at Panther Stadium. It was at the actual set. So it was interesting, the producer had to fight NBC for the right to get the stadium. Apparently she found an abandoned stadium and built it into the ideal Panther Stadium. At first the set was too shiny and perfect and clean and glistening, and that really didn't fit the tone of feeling abandoned. It just felt too pretty. And so they went through the stands and dulled the entire set of bleachers. We actually took it at the perfect time of the day. We wanted this sense of loneliness. The character, Matt Saracen, played by Zach Gilford, is a very introspective young man. His opposing force is his own self-imposed sense of abandonment. Taylor Kirsch plays a character, Tim Riggins, and Tim Riggins is a heroic type character. He's a guy a lot of us knew in high school that really runs the risk of peaking early, peaking at 17, those being the greatest moments of his life. So he has all these strong qualities of an alpha male, but his opposing force is his own complacency. This is one of those actors that really seemed like he was his character in a good way. I mean, he was so willing. We wanted to create a very dramatic set for him. So we had this idea of if he was so complacent, if his opposing force was that complacency, if he refused to move, if he did not budge for 30 years, stood in the driveway of his house, drinking beer, wearing his uniform, what might he look like? If he didn't age himself, he still stayed very virile and strong, but he hadn't moved, what would that look like? It really needed to look dilapidated. The environment they built was remarkable, the weeds and leaves and layers of dirt and this sign. Each football player would have a sign from their house that has their name and position on it. His tattered jersey falling off him. It couldn't have been styled better.
Ran for 1,300 yards this game.
This next shot was the selfless, and not all the opposing forces are necessarily negative. If this shot weren't handled through the lens of Martin Schuler, it really could look corny. The character Tammy, the wife of Coach Taylor, Tammy Taylor, who's played by an actress named Connie Britton, who is just fantastic. Her opposing force, in a sense, is the fact that she's so giving. She has a teenage daughter and an infant baby and a charismatic, important husband who's the coach of the high school football team, who's really a leader himself. We created this shot in which many characters are physically pulling on her, demanding her time. We call it the selfless, because even though everybody's pulling her in all these different directions, she remains kind, she remains positive and optimistic. The title of the shot is The Determined, and that's kind of, it speaks to a lot of the characters as well. This was the biggest production for sure. We took over a deserted road outside of Austin. We replicated the Welcome to Dillon, Texas sign, which was about 6 feet long, and the guys built an exact replica that was maybe, I don't know, 20 feet wide. It needed to be lifted by a crane. It was kind of cut into pieces and torn apart a little bit so it could look like it was falling on the entire crew. David and I were concepting on what would be a good closing image where we could have the entire cast, and what could we say, what was an opposing force that maybe affected all of them. And it really was the pressure of the town itself. The town of Dillon, Texas, on some levels is very heavy and almost weighs on the characters. You feel presence of the culture, how much scrutiny these football players are under, even though they're just high school kids, but a lot of people's happiness seem to rely on the success of a football team. Really, what used to be fine art photography, what used to be fashion photography is becoming marketing, is becoming advertising. I think people are exhausted by the amount of messages that are bombarding them on a daily basis. So not only do you need to get your message out there in a way that's strategic and intelligent, but you also want to do it in a way that's beautiful and captivating. That it really is the Deutsch attitude, to create advertising that's meaningful. I think that's been Eric Hirschberg's philosophy from the beginning, to talk about advertising that's really invited in, that really speaks to some sort of universal truth. Good work comes from a good client, and in this case, the clients really understood the show and understood the value of doing something with integrity. For the scale of the shoot, the ambition of the shoot, to go from concept to sketches, from your imagination to the final image, to watch how these set builders and other creators came together to really improve on the idea was so satisfying. It really was one of the most satisfying shoots I've ever worked on.